In this video, we are talking about 7 players that you must add immediately in fantasy football after week 6, plus 5 players that you must stash now to get ahead of your league mates. Starting with my number 1 pickup of the week, Tyrone Tracy Jr. He was on the waiver wire video last week. He was a must start for me this week, so hopefully he's already on your team. Hopefully he was in your starting lineup last week, but if not, he needs to be added to your team because Tracy saw a workhorse role in week 6, 84% snap rate, 72% route participation. And while his rushing metrics weren't great, 2.9 yards per carry, he still got into the end zone and was very involved in the passing game, catching all 6 of his targets for 57 yards. Tracy passes the eye test with flying colors, and it's evident that he has a lot more juice than Singletary does. Even when Devin returns, I think there's going to be a role for Tracy in this offense. How can there not be after these last 2 weeks? I'd argue that he's the Giants' better running back at this point. Maybe the coaching staff thinks the same as well, which is why he is a must-add. Because if the Giants make him the RB1 the rest of the season, then that holds a ton of value. But there is obviously a chance that once Singletary returns, Tracy sees a smaller role. That's why you shouldn't go crazy with your fab, just in case that does happen. But if you are desperate, you need a running back, and want someone that I think has league-winning upside, if everything breaks right for Tyrone, then I would be aggressive getting him on your team because the talent's there. This Giants offense is a lot better than it was last year, and it's even better when Malik Neighbors is on the football field. Daniel Jones not playing terrible football. He's good enough right now. So if Tracy does get that RB1 role moving forward, then he could be a steal. Get him on the waiver wire now, and he could be really good for the rest of the year. At number 2, Juju SmithSchuster. This one pains me to even have him on this list because I was heavily invested in Rashee Rice a ton this season. I had him in a lot of leagues, so this one hurts. But we have to move on. And that's what Kansas City is doing. It's next man up. And Juju looks to be the guy as he's the poor man version of Rashee Rice. And let's be honest, Juju isn't that great of a receiver anymore. But I'm not sure it really matters when you're attached to Patrick Mahomes on a really good offense that has very few options in the passing game outside of 35-year-old Travis Kelce. And don't forget that just 2 years ago, Juju saw 100 targets in this Chiefs offense. So he already has familiarity with the scheme, with the system, with the coaching staff. He has chemistry with Patrick Mahomes. And Juju impressed in week 5, 7 catches, 130 yards, 20 fantasy points. So while I wouldn't expect that to be his stat line every single week, did you see what Rashee Rice was doing in this role before he got hurt? He was a monster every single game. Now, Rice is a much better player than Juju is, but I think Juju is serviceable enough where he's going to have a role in this offense, and if they don't add a veteran receiver anytime soon, then he is going to be the number 2 option in a potent passing attack. So he is obviously a guy that needs to be added in all formats because of everything that we just talked about. He's going to be a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 the rest of the way with some spike weeks, some big games that we just saw in week 5. So add Juju if you need a receiver. At number 3, Demario Douglas. New England finally turned the page and handed the reins over to rookie quarterback, 3rd overall pick, Drake May. And that's great news for everyone involved in the offense, especially the pass catchers. And not to toot my own horn, but we did have Douglas listed as a sleeper for week 6, and he came through in a big way. If you plugged him into your lineup, 6 catches, 92 yards, a touchdown, 9 targets, 21.2 fantasy points, along with a 29% target share, 33% first read share on Sunday. Douglas looks to be the number 1 receiver on this offense. Granted, there's not much competition, but he's going to be May's favorite target moving forward. His safety blanket underneath. He's a PPR monster. He's an explosive guy that you want on your team because he's a big play threat on a New England offense that's starving for playmakers. Yes, they have a lot of young receivers, but Douglas, second-year guy, really good player, in my opinion, finally has a quarterback. Really like him the rest of the way. Get him on your roster. And Douglas should have another big game in week 7 against the horrible Jacksonville Jaguars secondary. At number 4, Tai Chandler would be the next man up in Minnesota's backfield if Aaron Jones, who's dealing with that hip injury, cannot go in week 7. He was practicing on Wednesday doing some light work, so maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. We don't really know. But Chandler needs to be added regardless, as he would be a rock-solid RB2 in any game that Jones misses. And with Aaron Jones, like I said, 29-year-old back, has been dealing with several different injuries over the last couple of years. Let's say Aaron Jones does play in week 7. I'd still want Chandler on my team. Tai is a talented, explosive, speedy back that can catch the football on a good Minnesota offense. And we saw what Chandler was capable of in week 15 last year when he went absolutely crazy, racking up 157 total yards, a touchdown, 24.7 fantasy points. So that's showing us his ceiling, and now he's on a better Minnesota offense this year. So even in a less than ideal matchup in week 7 against a really good Detroit Lions run defense, with all the injuries, 2 teams on bye this week, if you can get the RB1 on a good offense that's going to see a workhorse role if the starter is out, you absolutely take advantage of that. At number 5, Christian Watson, who's coming off that ankle injury, didn't matter, got into the end zone on Sunday, 15.8 fantasy points. Yes, this Green Bay wide receiver room is crowded, but you want as many pieces of this elite Packers offense as you can get, because Jordan Love is scorching hot right now, as he's currently tied for the second most touchdown passes in the NFL, and that's even with missing 2 games due to injury. So yeah, I want Christian Watson on my team, especially now with Dontavian Wicks set to miss a couple weeks with the shoulder injury, which will open up the door for Watson, who's a really good player. He's probably the second most talented player on this team in this wide receiver room outside of Jaden Reed, as he's a playmaking machine with a nose for the end zone and possesses a big frame sitting at 6'4", with blazing 4.3 speed on a creative Green Bay offense that's looking to be one of the best units in all of football, attached to Jordan Love, with a brilliant play caller in Matt LaFleur. These are guys you want on your team. So if you need a receiver, Watson would be a very smart one to add. At number 6, Blake Corum. I always like to give you guys a sneaky ad, someone to get on your team now for cheap that you won't see on many other waiver wire videos. Kyren Williams continues to see a workhorse role for LA and is scoring touchdowns at a very impressive rate, but Blake made the most of his opportunities in week 5 and looked pretty good doing it, averaging 5 yards per carry. And don't forget the player that Corum is, as he tore his meniscus in November of 2022 and then went on to have his best season as he led Michigan to a national championship where he went for over 1,200 rushing yards and 27 touchdowns. Blake is an elite talent that would be a league winner if anything ever happened to Kyren. We know Williams' extensive injury history, as he's an undersized back and he just gets hurt a lot. He has ankle, foot issues. So for right now, Corum is an elite running back stash, and we know running backs who play under Sean McVay in that system, it's very friendly. They tend to have a lot of success. So if Kyren were to ever miss time, Blake would be a top 5 running back in any of those games that Williams is not playing. So these are guys, especially as the season goes on, you want to get them on your roster now, because if Kyren gets hurt, Blake would absolutely win people their fantasy leagues. At number 7, Isaac Gendo. While it doesn't sound like Jordan Mason suffered a serious shoulder injury, there's always a chance though he could miss this week. And Isaac showed us in week 5 that San Francisco just knows how to draft running backs. Gendo had a highlight reel 76-yard run, which would have been a touchdown had he not slid to seal the game against Seattle. He didn't want them to get the ball back. I get it. But nonetheless, the rookie is a very talented player and possesses a nice size-speed combo, sitting at 6 feet tall, 220 pounds, 4.3 speed. So getting the running back one on a potent San Francisco offense is a smart idea, but obviously be cautious with your fab just in case Mason does play this week. You don't want to drop a bag on Isaac and then he just doesn't play at all. But if you want to stash a guy that holds tremendous value, I would still go after Isaac. Just don't put a lot of money down to get him. And if Mason doesn't play, then Gendo is a top 24, top 15 play at the position in week 7. On to some quick honorable mentions. Tank Bigsby, yes, he had a bad day last week, but ETN now dealing with that hamstring injury. Bigsby is going to have a bigger role moving forward. So if you can still get him on the waiver wire, absolutely do that. Josh Downs has been phenomenal with Joe Flacco under center, but it looks like Richardson is set to return this week, so doesn't make him as appealing, but he's still a guy you need to add. Xavier Legette, we like him. Jaylen Warren, just a running back that if Najee were to get hurt, Warren has tremendous upside. And Romeo Doubs for the Packers. If you really need a receiver, he's coming off a 2-touchdown performance. On to some guys that you need to stash. Sean Tucker for Tampa Bay, who just had a huge game. I don't see how Rachaad White has a role in this running back room with how well Irving and Tucker played. So absolutely add Sean Tucker. He holds tremendous value on a really good Tampa Bay offense. Jalen Wright for the Dolphins. He's been really good with his opportunities. Marshawn Lloyd, a little bit of a quieter name that no one's really talking about. Packers rookie running back. Josh Jacobs has been meh most of the year. We know they want to use 2 running backs. They spent high draft capital to get Marshawn. And once he's healthy, he's going to have a role. So get him on your team now. Stash him in your IR. Kimani Vidal, who had that 30-plus yard touchdown reception. He looked like Austin Eckler out there. I'd be wanting to get him on my roster with J.K. Dobbins. Always seeming to get injured. He would have a huge role if he went down. And then Trey Benson for the Cardinals, rookie running back. We know James Conner's banged up. We know that Arizona might not want to give Benson a workhorse role without Conner, but still needs to be added. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you took away anything from the video, if you could please subscribe to the channel, like the video. It helps me out more than you know, and I will see you in the next one.